This is Vijay Merchant. I was born on 12th October 1911 in a Hindu family. To that extent alone, I consider myself a Hindu. Otherwise, I follow a religion called Religion of Humanity, which has no distinctions between sex, caste, color, creed, any. I have four brothers and one sister. In all, six children in the family. My uncle, the late Sir Vithaldas Thakazee, asked my father whether I could stay with him in Pune, where he was based, so as to give him company, because Sir Vithaldas and Lady Thakazee had no issue of their own. And that is why, ever since I was 18 months old, to the stage when I reached 6 years of age, I stayed with them in Pune. At the age of 6, I was brought down to Bombay for permanent residence with my parents because I had to attend school. In my time, one attended school at the age of 6, 7, 8, not 2, 3, and 4 as it is at present. I do sincerely hope and pray that the age of attendance in a school does not go below 2 years. I must tell you now how I got the name Merchant, because I happen to be a member of the Thakazee family. As a matter of fact, to what extent I am a Thakazee can well be judged by the fact that the SNDT Women's University, to give its full name, Srimati Nathibai Damodar Thakazee Women's University, I am a grandson of Srimati Nathibai Thakazee. People naturally wonder why a member of a Thakazee family calls himself Merchant. I will tell you. When I went to the school for the first time at the age of 6, that is in 1917, the then principal of the Bhadanu High School, Mr. Kekobad Merzban, naturally asked me my name. I gave it. Then he asked me my father's name. I gave that also. And then we came to the name, surname. And I had the audacity to tell him, even at the age of 6, that I did not have a surname. He asked, "What are you known as?" "Thakazee, sir." "Then say that Thakazee is your surname." Even at that time, I had the courage to tell the truth, and I stated, "Sir, Thakazee is not my surname, it is my great-grandfather's name." By that time, the elderly Parsi gentleman had lost his temper, because a young brat 6 years old was taking up his time while there were above 70 or 80 children waiting for an interview. And so she shouted back at me and said, "What do your people do? Business? Service?" And I said, "Sir, they are traders, they are merchants of cloth." Immediately on hearing the name Merchant, he said, "All right, then you are Vijay Merchant." And so, as far back as 1917, a surname was given to me, which I still carry with proud privilege and have stuck to it, although all my brothers are Thakazees, and my sister, who never got married and rendered yeoman service to the SNDT Women's University as a sub-registrar and later as registrar for 18 years, were all Thakazees. The Bhadanu High School had a great tradition for cricket, and so I naturally got into cricket as a fish takes to water. I was put at the age of 9 in the C net because the school boasted of A nets, B nets, and 3 nets. In the C net, I spent 3 years, and the school coach felt that I was good enough for promotion and was put on the B net. Again, a couple of years at the B net, and then I was graduated to the A net. That was at the age of 11. And then came a surprise. At the age of 13, I was appointed captain of the Burdanu High School for the junior team, which always took part in the Giles Shield cricket tournament, which is in vogue even now. And at 13, I did not know what were the duties of a captain. Mind you, we had no coach as such in the Burdanu High School. As a matter of fact, in my time there was no coaching at all, and those who supervised the nets were the games masters, meaning they were actual teachers in the school, and in the evening they gave a little time of their own to supervise the nets. And so I went to Mr. Behram Merzban, the elder son of the principal, and asked him what I had to do. And thereby hangs a very big joke or a humorous incident. Mr. Merzban told me, Vijay, when it is 15 minutes before the start of play, go to the tent of the other school and ask for their captain. After the captain has come out, ask him who their umpires were. Yes, in my time, each school brought its own umpire, and the authorities never appointed any umpires. So there was no neutral umpiring in my school days. I followed all the instructions to the letter. At 10:15, I went up to the opponent's tent and asked the captain to come out. A young chap, but 2 years my senior, came out, and I asked him who were his umpire. He named a person who happened to be their cricket coach. Again, following the directions of Mr. Merzban, I said, sorry, young man, you can't have that man as your umpire because he is your coach. He turned round to the tent where the coach was sitting, and he said, sir, an objection has been taken against you for umpiring this match because you are our coach. And the coach, or the likely umpire, shouted back and said, you object to their umpire. So the man objected to my umpire. I turned round and said, young man, I have not even given you the name of my umpire. How can you object to it? So he said, I object to whomsoever you appoint as umpire. And so at the age of 13, I showed a bit of intelligence by naming someone who was fictitious, who was not even on the ground. He was objected to by the other captain, and then I named the man whom we had brought as umpire, and he umpired the match. Our matches in those days were played in the months of July and August, when the monsoon in Bombay is at its severest. A score of 50 is a winning total. But after winning the toss on a wet wicket, I put the other side into bat, and they scored only 10 runs. When we went into bat, we had made 44 for one wicket. I was batting at one end with about 21, when I suddenly found at the end of the over all the students going back to the pavilion. I turned round to the umpire and said, Mr. Umpire, why are they going back to the pavilion? And he said, their coach from the tent shouted to them and said, enough is enough, young people, come back, we shall go to the school. And that was my first experience of a walkover, or conceding the match to the other side when there is no chance of winning. This is something that I have never learnt in my school days, because our school had taught us to fight it out, to play it out, irrespective of whether you are in a position to lose or in a position to win. In other words, it is the game that matters, not victory or defeat. In my last 2 years, I played both for the junior team and the senior team. I captained the juniors in all for 3 years, 1924, 25 and 26, and I played for the senior team in the Harris Shield tournament in 1925 and 1926. In 1926, we won both the Giles Shield and the Harris Shield. But what was most memorable for me was that as a junior and playing for a senior team, I scored a century in each innings against the Wilson High School. And believe me, throughout my cricket career, I never was able to repeat this performance of a century in each innings, a score, an achievement that completely eluded me for reasons I am not aware of. In 1927, I left school and went to the Elphinstone College. In my time, there was no first year in commerce, and so one had to spend 1 year either in an arts college or a science college, and then go to the Sydenham College of Commerce, at that time the only commerce of college in Bombay, to attend inter-commerce classes. I went to Sydenham College in 1928, and immediately I got recognition. Previously, in 1927, I did nothing of note on the cricket field, for the simple reason that although Elphinstone College was noted for its studies, its education, it was not noted for its cricket, and we lost in the very first round. But in 1928 in the Sydenham College, when I entered that institution, there was some internal fight between two factions, each of whom wanted their representative to captain the side. A was not acceptable to the B, and B was not acceptable to A. And in that confusion, C got a chance to captain the team, and that C was Vijay Merchant. So without making any effort towards building the side in any way, I was appointed captain. And believe it or not, until then, Sydenham College had not won the championship, but they had not even survived the first round. In 1928, as per previous tradition, we lost in the first round. In 1929, we won the first round and lost in the second. And in 1931, we won the championship for the first and only time up to now in the history of the Sydenham College. We won the Northcote Shield and the Rahimtullah Challenge Cup in the same year, and it is rather regrettable that after these 50 years and more, the championship has not yet come the way of Sydenham College. In 1929, I got the privilege of playing for the Hindus in the quadrangular cricket tournament in the communal series. We had in those days the communal series. First it was the presidency matches between the Europeans and the Parsis. Then we had the Hindus entering the arena and making it a triangular. Then we had the Muslims again entering the arena and making it a quadrangular. And in 1937, all those communities who could not be fitted into any of the four teams put up a team called the REST, R-E-S-T, and thereby started the Pentangular Championship from 1937. In 1946, they were given up because of the strong opposition to communal matches, both in Bombay and in the rest of India. I had outstanding performances in the quadrangular and pentangular matches, and I understand that even now the number of runs made in those series was the highest by me, and the average also in that series was at the top. In 1936, I had the great privilege of playing against Harold Larwood, the world's fastest bowler at that time. But then, he was a great menace in 1932-33 when he went to Australia and started what has come to be known bodyline bowling, meaning you try to hit the man, not the wicket. and you try to bowl at a speed and at a length where self-defense is more important than making strokes. Negative cricket, if you like, but that is how it was in 1932-33 in Australia, and it brought about nearly a disruption in the cricketing relations between Australia and England for some time. But when I played Larwood in the year 1936 in Bombay, at the Bombay Gymkhana ground, Larwood was only half his pace of 1932 because he had injured his big toe on the very hard wickets of Australia, as a result of which he was a very good medium pace bowler, being able to swing both ways and cut the ball off the seam both ways, but no longer a intimidatory bowler. In 1933, Douglas Jardine brought his first official cricket team to India. Official in the sense that there was a test match in it. And playing in one of the previous matches, I suffered an injury on my chin. The mark is still shown today for a reason which is most humorous. As I got hit when the total was 8 for 4, I came into the pavilion and an English doctor immediately took me to his consulting rooms. He put in 3 stitches in my chin and asked me not to remove the bandage at night. He asked me to take rest after my innings was over. If you ask me, I did not want to continue the innings because I was afraid, I was nervous. But the doctor knew the psychology of a young man who, if he was afraid at the start of his career by a fast ball injuring him, he would never be able to play good cricket. As we went to the pavilion in his car, he more or less pushed me back on the field of play immediately at the fall of the next wicket. And because of the training I had received in my school and my college, once I left the pavilion and went on to the field, I lost all my nervous feeling, and then it was only the bat, the ball and the bowler. I made only 19 not out in that innings out of a total of 87 all out. But believe me, that was one of the finest innings I have ever played, because I got rid of fear, I got rid of nervousness, and then I felt for the first time that at the most a fast ball can injure you, it cannot kill you. The next day I rested while the MCC built up a total of over 450. On the third morning, when I went back, my captain wanted me to go back and bat in the opening pair. I said, "Sir, I have never opened the innings even in third-rate cricket. Why put me as an opening batsman against these 2 fast English bowlers with an injury already inflicted on me?" But the captain argued and argued, and after all, a junior cricketer cannot argue with the captain. But he at least relented to the extent of sending me number 4. In the first innings, I was number 6. Again the same thing happened in the second innings as in the first, meaning I lost my nervousness completely. I batted as the balls came to me. I played again a very great innings for me, although the total was only 67 not out of a total of 223 for 5 wickets. But that innings, more than any other, got me into the test team in 1933-34, a place which I did not lose for 22 years, although during that long stretch of time I could play only 10 test matches. That was because in my time test matches were few and far between, and the war intervened, which took away 8 years of Test cricket. In 1936, I went to England for the first time. But before then, I had a short trip to Sri Lanka as a member of the university occasionals team which went there. We played about 3 or 4 matches in which I did reasonably well. But while I was in Sri Lanka, I received an invitation from the Maharaj Kumar of Vizianagaram from Delhi to be one of his team in the Silver Jubilee tournament that year, 1 month later. Knowing cricket politics as they obtained in India at that time, in my telegram of acceptance I said, subject to my playing both the matches irrespective of my performance in the first. Maharaj Kumar sent back a telegram guaranteeing my place in both the matches irrespective of my performance in the first. Now many of those who will listen to this will say that was not cricket. Yes, I admit that was not cricket. No cricketer can ever ask for a place in the second test match irrespective of his performance in the first one. But then conditions of that time prevailed in a manner where for party reasons one could be dropped, and I felt that I had a reasonable chance of making the trip to England in 1936, and I didn't want my position to be jeopardized by being dropped from the team in the second match after playing the first. It was only for that reason that I had to make that stipulation, a stipulation which was most degrading even for me, and one which I have never made in my lifetime. I played in both the matches in 1935, and I need not have any apprehension because in the first match I scored 4 and 130 not out, while in the second I scored 81 and 100 not out. So even on my performances, I would have got a place in the Indian team to England in 1936. And so we went to England in 1936 under the captaincy of the Maharaj Kumar of Vizianagaram. And those who listen to this will hardly believe me that we not only went by boat, which took us 17 days to reach England, but that my cabin and the cabin of at least other 6 cricketers was under the sea level. Although we were in first class, we were on the E deck, which was below the sea. There was no window, there was no porthole in my cabin, only a pipe through which fresh air came in. And my mother, who came to see me off, was so much surprised and astounded that she asked me to change my cabin immediately. And I had to explain to her, Mother, this is something that is not done by individual cricketers. The authorities decide where we should stay, and the authorities have decided that the junior-most players, 6 of them, should be on the E deck. I am going to remain here. Don't worry about me. We went to England in 1936. A wet season, and yet my performances were such as to get me a place in the Wisden's Cricketers' Almanac as one of the 5 cricketers of the year. I scored 1745 runs at an average of 51.23, which gave me 4th position in the English batting averages. And I scored a century in the second test match, where we put up the magnificent opening stand of 203 runs after being 368 runs behind on the first innings. England scored 571 for 6 or 7 in answer to our total of 203. Those were 3-day matches, not 5-day matches. At one time, 3 days were enough to get a decision in a test match. When they couldn't get decision in 3 days, they made it 4 days. Then they made it 5 days. And even now, with 5 days test matches, 50% of the test matches are drawn. Don't be surprised, therefore, if after 2 or 3 years we have 6 days allotted to each and every test match. That is, if before then one day's cricket does not take over, or shall we say limited overseas cricket does not take over, and that even in test matches 100 overs are allowed for each innings, that would mean on the first day team A bats, on the second day team B bats, on the third day team A bats in its second innings, on the fourth day team B bats in the second innings, and each innings would be limited to 100 overs. If that is not done, probably a sixth day may be added in due course of time. Now let me tell you what this cricketers of the year, or shall we say 5 cricketers of the year, are in Wisden's Cricket Almanac. Anyone who goes to England and performs well has got a chance to be included. And believe me, it is an honor for a visiting cricketer, because a visiting cricketer may only make one trip to England, or he may make 2, or like Sunil Gavaskar, as many as 5. But then he has got to do well in that particular year, otherwise he does not get an entry in this Hall of Fame, as if it were. There have been outstanding cricketers, and one of them is Vijay Hazare, who has scored a century in each innings in a test match in Australia against Ray Lindwall and Keith Miller at their best, but who could not find a place in the Wisdens, because both in 1952 and 1946, when he went to England, he did not do outstandingly well to gain entry. I personally feel that this practice of including only those who play well on English wickets is a wrong one, but then who am I to dictate to that great committee of Wisden Cricketers Almanac? I don't know. Anyway, my performances in 1936 were considered outstanding enough in a wet season to gain an entry for me in the Wisden Cricketers Almanac. Those who have followed me in that are Vinu Mankad, Nawab of Pataudi, Chandra Shekhar, Sunil Gavaskar, Kapil Dev, and perhaps 1 or 2 others whom I cannot remember now. And the only man who preceded me from India was Colonel C.K. Naidu in 1932. I am not deliberately including K.S. Ranjit Singh Ji, K.S. Duleep Singh Ji, or the Nawab of Pataudi Senior, for the simple reason that, to my humble way of thinking, they were not Indian cricketers, they were English cricketers. They played the best part of their life in England, and the entry that they got into the Wisdens was because of they did as cricketers playing in England. When we came back, the team came by boat, but I came by air because my elder brother told me that we do not know whether you will ever again go to England or not, so why not pay a visit to the continent, see some of the countries, and then come over to India by plane from Italy. And that is exactly what I did. And people now will be surprised to know that for the 15 days that I spent on the continent, it did not cost me more than 40 pounds. And today, 40 pounds is not enough even for 1 day's stay in England in a respectable hotel. That is how the cost of living has gone up. But let us not divert to that. I had a very splendid time on the continent, and I caught the plane at Brindisi in Italy to come back to India. And then what happened? From Brindisi, it took me 2 nights and 3 days to get to Karachi. Yes, 2 nights and 3 days. And today it does not take more than 10.5 hours or 11 hours to get to England. That is how speed has gone up in the matter of transport. When I went to Karachi, I had to spend the night. And when I went to the airport, the Karachi airport, I got the shock of my life. What was there? A plane? No. A small one-engine plane, a four-seater, believe it or not. A four-seater plane with one engine. And if that engine failed, naturally the engine in my heart would have also failed. And how many passengers in that four-seater plane? Only one, myself. The only other occupant of that cabin was the pilot himself. And we were flying at an average height of 1,000 feet, not 31,000 feet as the big planes do now. It took 4 hours from Karachi to Ahmedabad. And when we got down to Ahmedabad for refueling, believe it or not, there was no canteen. There was nothing except a small shack. And there was just one matka with some cold water and a brass tumbler to drink the water with. The pilot took out his box and started his lunch. He asked me why I was not bringing my lunch. I said, naturally, when you go to the airport, you don't carry your lunch with you. You expect some snacks there. Sorry, sir. These are the initial stages of air transport in India, and nothing is provided except drinking water. He felt odd to have his lunch alone, and so he offered to share it with me. I couldn't share it with him because he was a non-vegetarian and all his dishes were non-vegetarian too. But he had one banana to go with that lunch. He offered me that banana, and that was my lunch at Ahmedabad in 1936. And then we came to Bombay. There was my family and a few friends to receive me. At the airport, I've still got the picture of that little plane, and I shudder to think what would happen now if I was invited to go to that plane to Delhi or even to Karachi. 1936 was a year in which I did well in domestic cricket. The quadrangular cricket, the last year of the quadrangular cricket tournament at the Bombay Gymkhana, when I scored a century in the first match against the Muslims, and then a century in the second match against the Europeans, for which Harold Larwood was playing. Hindus won that tournament, the last one on the Bombay Gymkhana ground, because the very next year the rest 11 came into the picture and the pentangular tournament was born at the Brabant Stadium. And so we come to 1937. In 1937, Lord Tennyson's team brought a team of fine cricketers, but no outstanding players. He came here to play 5 representative matches. The Board of Control invited me to captain the side, which I did. We lost the first 2 matches. We won the next 2 matches, and my performances were so very poor that year, as a result of less concentration on the game because of my father's death, that after the 4th match was finished and we were 2-all, I tendered my resignation as captain to the Board of Control for Cricket in India. It was not accepted by Mr. Anthony de Mello on the grounds that a captain does not leave his team when in midstream. I know we were in midstream. The last test match was to be played. But my schooling and my training taught me to get away from a team when I could not get a place in the side either for my batting or for my bowling. And my batting performances were so poor. As a matter of fact, 19 was the highest score in about 7 innings. And I felt that I was a drag on my team, not an asset. But Mr. de Mello thought otherwise, forced me to take over the captaincy in the 5th match, which unfortunately we lost against Lord Tennyson. That was 1937, when the Brabant Stadium was inaugurated. And there is a wonderful story about the Brabant Stadium. The man who built it was Mr. Anthony de Mello, than whom there has been no greater organizer or administrator in Indian cricket. He had practically nothing in the bank, and yet he had the courage to build a big stadium. He started the Cricket Club of India in New Delhi in 1934. So the Golden Jubilee of the Cricket Club should have been performed in 1984. But we didn't, because the Brabant Stadium and the Cricket Club of India Pavilion were inaugurated on the 7th December 1937. And so we are going to celebrate the Golden Jubilee of the pavilion and the stadium in 1987. But that was how the stadium was built, inaugurated, and it has remained there since, although without any further test matches. But the contractor of that stadium, Mr. Shapurji Palanji, a great man, an adventurous man, a self-made man. He built the stadium, but he was not paid anything for it. He was most reluctant to hand over the keys of the stadium to the Cricket Club of India authorities. And I must say, to the everlasting credit of the then Governor of Bombay, Sir Roger Lumley, who waited up to midnight with the contractor, with the committee of the Cricket Club of India, and sat down to find a solution so that the next day's match with Lord Tennyson's team would not be a fiasco. Ultimately, Sir Navroji Saklatwala of the Tatars gave a guarantee on behalf of the Tatars that if the Cricket Club of India authorities were not to be in a position to pay Mr. Shapurji Palanji for the Brabant Stadium, the Tatars would pay. And so at midnight, an agreement was struck between the contractor and the Cricket Club of India through the good offices of the Tatars. And so the next morning, the stadium was inaugurated by Sir Roger Lumley, the Governor of Maharashtra, and the first man to be introduced to the Governor and his good lady was Mr. Shapurji Palanji. That was 1937-38. The Indian team did reasonably well, but not well enough. But it was a turning point in my career from this point of view that, although I never was an opening batsman in my life, when in England in 1936, the opening batsmen continuously failed in the initial matches, both the captain and Major Britton Jones, the manager, came to me and said, "Vijay, will you open? Gentlemen, I have no objection in opening, but I have not opened even in a third grade match, and I am completely new to the new ball." They said, "Your way of playing, your patience, your ability to leave the ball that is likely to get your wicket has impressed us so very much that your technique will be sufficient to keep the moving ball out of your wicket and out of the wicket keeper's hands in case you touch it." I was given just 3 matches to experiment with. I failed in the first match. I failed in the second match. In the third match, I scored 95 at Lord's, and that fixed me for the opening position throughout the rest of the season. Against Lord Tennyson's 11, I failed in the first match. I failed in the second test match as a result of lack of concentration, lack of practice, and taking guidance from my seniors, I went lower down in the batting order. That did not help me at all, and I failed in the third match, the fourth match, and the fifth match, thereby learning a lesson that if you are not in form, irrespective of which position you occupy in the batting order, the result will be the same. These years, Sunil Gavaskar has been going in lower in the batting order. He is now 36. Probably he feels that his reflexes are getting slower. I do not know. I think the reflexes are there, everything is there, except that his few failures as an opening batsman has made many people feel that it would be better for him to go down in the batting order. And so he has done that. He has had some success. Of course, his 30th Test century was when he went in number 4 or number 5. But lately, he has not been making runs even at number 5. And I wonder if he will end his remarkable and unparalleled cricket career as India's opening batsman again. I remained in that position for as long as 9 years. And it was in 1945 that a great Indian cricketer came along to occupy the position of Secretary of the Cricket Club of India, K.S. Duleep Singh ji, who had a long chat with me one day, and he more or less blatantly told me, Vijay, are you mad? You go to England and in a wet season you make over 1700 runs at an average of 51 plus, and then on your perfect wickets in India, with the ball moving ever so little either in the air or off the wicket, you go down in lower in the batting order because now you have made runs? No, that is not fair to you. That is not fair to your team. That is not fair to Indian cricket. But sir, I said, after all these years you want me to go up again? Yes, I want you to go up again, more so because we are going to England in 1946 and I cannot think of anyone opening the batting order in England except you at one end. You try getting into practice as an opening batsman once again and let us see how it goes. Well, I opened the innings once again in our matches in Sri Lanka, where we visited in 1945, the first official Indian team to go there under my captaincy. And when we came back, I reported to Duleep Singh ji, who was satisfied with my performances enough to make me go as an opening batsman in England in 1946. And what happened? 1946 was the most glorious cricketing summer that I have ever had. In the wettest cricket season since the Second World War, when we had only 17 days on which it did not rain at all, otherwise it rained. In such a wet season, I made 2,385 runs at an average of 74.53, which gave me second standing in the English batting averages. No, I did not get a place in the Wisdens because it is the convention that once you appear in Wisdens, you never appear again, irrespective of how great your performances are. That year, it was Vinu Mankad who took over, and Vinu Mankad got a place as one of the 5 cricketers of the year. His performances, over 1100 runs and nearly 130 wickets. We both had outstanding performances that year, but on the whole, the performances of the Indian team were rather poor. That was one year on which we should have won a test match in England, because England had yet not grown out of the effects of the Second World War, 1939 to 1944, and was still trying to find their feet. And yet, an Indian team with cricket all round the year and throughout the war just could not make it. England were not at their best, and probably India was certainly nowhere near its best. Otherwise, we would have registered at least one victory. And that brings me to the question of why I have never captained India officially. 2 incidents appeared in my career which kept me away from India captaincy. I've always tried to call a spade, but not in the blunt manner in which a man can rightly say that his mother is his father's wife. No, not that way. But I've always cared for Indian cricketers and I've fought for them. But probably my fights were at the wrong time because I did not get any support from the cricketers for whom I was fighting. And twice I fought and did not succeed. The first time was when in Bombay, the finals of the Ranji Trophy finals between Bombay and Holkar, a person who was occupying a very high position in the board tried to interfere with the match by asking the umpire for an explanation why he had given a particular Holkar batsman out LBW. That is never done, but then he did it. We saw it. But there was nothing we could do about it. At the prize distribution ceremony, I spoke my mind without mentioning the name of the person concerned. But everyone knew whom I meant. And next day in the papers, his name appeared. I was called for an explanation by that gentleman, who was at that time the president of the board. Not being a legal man, I did not know whether I would get into any difficulties by the wrong answer. I just said, whatever I have to say, I will say at the right time in the right quarters. You will hardly believe me when I say that a resolution was tabled in the annual general meeting of the board, asking the board to rusticate Vijay Merchant for a period of 3 years for criticizing the highest official of the board. After a lot of discussion, one particular gentleman, Mr. Homi Contractor, said, "Sir, if Vijay Merchant has made an accusation, he would have enough grounds to prove it. And if he were to prove in a court of law that the president did try to come in the normal way of the match being played out, that president would have not only to tender his resignation as president, but even tender his resignation from the high post that he was occupying in politics." That did the trick, and although Vijay Merchant was not rusticated or debarred from first-class cricket for 3 years, his captaincy was taken away. And who was brought in? The Nawab of Pataudi Senior. A very fine man, a great cricketer in his time, but who was out of first-class cricket for a period of 7 years. I think Pataudi did the greatest injustice to himself by allowing his name to be proposed as captain of the Indian team to England 1946. He was at that time not a playing cricketer. He was at that time away from cricket for 7 years. And 7 years is a long time when you are on the wrong side of 27 or 28. Pataudi had a poor season. The Indian team had a poor season. But taking away the captaincy from me was the finest blessing in disguise that I could have asked for. Since I was not captain, I was appointed vice captain as a compromise. I could concentrate entirely on my batting, to that extent that although in 1936 I had taken more wickets and bowled more overs than Amir Ilahi, our great spinner, in 1946, respecting my wishes, the Nawab of Pataudi did not call me to bowl a single over. In other words, I could concentrate on my batting. I put up performances which I thought I was not capable of, particularly in a very wet season, and ended the season in a blaze of glory. And that is how we came back to India in 1946 without anything to credit us with a test victory, which we had been hoping for and which thought would be ours because England was tired. England had lost some of her cricketers in the war, and England had still to get out of the after effects of the war, which went on from 1939 to 1944. The other incident was in 1951 when we were playing the second Commonwealth team. Now, in that last match at Kanpur, when we went there, the temperature was 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which was extreme cold for the western zone and the south zone players, naturally. When we went there, I was told, I happened to be captain of the Indian 11, not of India, mind you, and we were taken to the Kamla Retreat, a sporting club of Kanpur, sponsored by Sir Padampat Singhania. The arrangements there were extremely poor. 4 people in one room with only one bathroom, the temperature 41 degrees, and although we had not asked for 5-star hotel treatment, naturally when cricketers play a very keen, interesting and a 5 days fixture, they need certain bare amenities of life. When I protested, the secretary of the organization told me, "Mr. Merchant, why are you protesting? We have provided a suite of rooms for you and your wife. And I had to answer back, gentlemen, don't bring my wife into the picture. My wife is not a member of the side. I have taken the permission of the board to bring my wife along with me. If you cannot accommodate my wife, it doesn't matter at all. I will go to Sir Padampat Singhania and ask that great man to house her for these 5 days. But give me and my team reasonable quarters so that we can put our best foot forward in the match that is to be played. There was nothing he could do because the visiting team of Commonwealth cricketers, that is, English cricketers, West Indies cricketers, Australian cricketers, and New Zealand cricketers, they were housed in the Kamla Retreat, the palatial guest house of the Singhanias, and palatial to the extent that 2 days in the week the residential quarters were thrown open for the public to come and see for themselves. There were so many antiques, so much rich furniture, such crockery that the public would like to see it. That was the type of residence for the visiting cricketers, while the home cricketers were given Kamra Retreat, a very ordinary sporting club. But then, this was not surprising considering that in my time, always the home team was discriminated against. Even in Calcutta, where they had 2 very big hotels, Great Eastern and Grand. The visitors were always in Great Eastern. The Indian team was always in the Grand. Why, I do not know. Why discrimination against India in our own country? But then, that is how it was in those years. I could even understand that until 1947, when we were under the British rule. But why in 1951, when we were independent and a government of our own? But then traditions die hard in all walks of life, and we were put up there. I asked for a meeting with the Maharaj Kumar of Vizianagaram, the president of the UP Cricket Association. I was taken there. The Maharaj Kumar, sitting by the fireside because it was cold, could not answer my question. Sir, why this discrimination against your own team? The tone of my voice and my arguments somehow indicated to him that if we were not given the right quarters to live, I might walk away with 4 or 5 members of the team back to Bombay and then suffer the consequences. Well, as a result of this interview, we got the right quarters for my team to stay, meaning the palatial guest house of Sir Padampat Singhania, the Kamla Retreat, and I lost India captaincy. That was because the board did not want an independent-minded cricketer to captain the side, one who was prepared to take up for the players to such an extent that he could speak like that to an ex-president of the board. As a result of that, in 1951-52, when an official English team came to India under the captaincy of Nigel Howard, Vijay Hazare was appointed captain, and I played under him. In the first test match at New Delhi, I opened the innings as usual. I scored 154 runs. That was a slow innings because my captain Vijay Hazare insisted that I keep my end up as long as possible and until he gave me the orders to hit out. Yes, my sense of discipline in those days and even afterwards in all aspects of life has been that I follow the leader and his dictates. When I scored 100 runs in that innings, I went up to Vijay Hazare and asked him if I could make an effort to score fast, in which process I might even lose my wicket. Vijay Hazare said, "No, Vijay, I will tell you when to hit out, and I will tell you when I need you to score very fast." And so I carried on and on, much against my own inclination, but carrying out the orders of the captain both in letter and in spirit. When I was 154, I was out to Statham, and this proved to me my last innings in Test cricket as well as first-class cricket, because in the second innings While running after a ball at long leg, I fell over, injured my right shoulder, actually sprained it very badly, which kept me out of all the other test matches. And that was the end of my cricket career. I was then 40 years old, and I had decided 15 years earlier that when I turned 40, I would retire from first class cricket. And I will tell you how I made this decision. In 1936, when I was watching a county match at Lord's, the home of cricket, I saw a great cricketer, an English cricketer, Patsy Hendren bat. He scored over 100 in the first innings, over 50 in the second innings, and then he was out. I went to the professionals' dressing room to offer my respects to him and congratulate him on those 2 innings. And I asked him a particular question. I said, "Sir, why are you retiring at the end of next season?" He had already announced that at the end of 1937, he would retire from first class cricket. I said, "Sir, you are playing so very well, 100 in the first innings, over 50 in the second innings, and you seem to be middling the ball so very well. Why then retire?" And he asked me a counter question. "Vijay, could you tell me why I got out in the second innings after making 50 and could not make 100? And I said, "Sir, it seems that you were a little tired." And back came the answer, "Yes, Vijay, that is exactly why I am retiring." And then he uttered a sentence which should be written in letters of gold and pasted all over our country. He said, "My son, you are young at present, but when your time comes, retire when people will ask why, not when they start asking why not." That was a sentence which has been enshrined on my heart, and that is why 15 years later, in 1951-52, when I was 40, I retired from first class cricket. I retired from test cricket also. Unfortunately, in our country, the meaning of the word retirement is just not known. Whatever be your field of activity, people just don't retire. You take politics, you take business, you take the stage, you take films, you take sport. Nobody ever voluntarily retires, because the glamour of the public eye and public adulation is so great that people just don't want to get away. And if anyone were to ask me what is the meaning of the word retirement, I would say that meaning is not in Indian dictionary. But if I were to give it a meaning, I would say dhakka maar ke nikalo, because that is what we do with most people who hang on to the stage, hang on to the field of play for so long that we are tired of them. They are not putting their weight in the side, and it is better for the progress of the game that they should go. This is a philosophy of life which I have implemented in all other fields of activity with which I have been connected.